What's up, everybody? I'm Josh Saleh, and welcome to AdoramaXP. Let's talk about remakes. There are so many games right now that have been remade. Final Fantasy, Demon's Souls, Resident Evil, Tony Hawk, and more are still to come. I mean, let's not talk about that Prince of Persia game that we saw a couple years ago. And we're like, what is going on? And then they went behind closed doors, and now we don't know anything about it or when it's coming out or anything. I hope it's good because I love Prince of Persia, but that's something that we don't know what's happening with that. But there are a ton of remakes coming out, already out, but there's still a lot of games that we still want remakes for that don't have remakes and maybe might not ever have remakes. So I thought we'd make a list of what remakes we want. Now, this list is not in any order. It's not the top 10. It's just what we want to see. Games we're hoping that get remade in the future so we can play them on next gen, on Unreal Engine 5, or the future of gaming. Maybe not VR. Don't need to see these games in VR. So let's talk about our most wanted remakes. Now, in talking about remakes, our first one has to be Half-Life. Where is Half-Life, y'all? I want there to be a new Half-Life remake so badly. I mean, obviously we want a Half-Life 3, but that's probably never going to happen. I mean, don't say never, but it's a good chance it's not going to happen. Half-Life was released in 1998, and it's one of the greatest games in FPS history, and arguably one of the most influential games in history. And it paved the way for a lot of games. Now, there already is a fan-made remake of Half-Life called Black Mesa. You can actually play it right now. It's really, really good. Black Mesa came out in 2015 and used the actual source code of Half-Life. Rumor has it they're making a remake of Black Mesa, so a remake of a remake. But again, this is fan-made. Not to say it's not good enough or not beautiful enough. It's actually really amazing and beautiful. But it's not Valve. Now, will that change anything if Valve made a Half-Life game? Now, chances are Valve will never go back to the first Half-Life, second Half-Life, or even the episodic Half-Lives. Right now, they seem to be focused on Half-Life VR, or Alyx, Half-Life Alyx. But it's based solely on their Steam console, their Steam VR headset, which you have to get in order to play. I mean, Valve is all about that, right? Sticking with Steam in order to play their games. Now, will we see a Half-Life on the Steam Deck? That would be a beautiful way to get people to get the Steam Deck. It would be such a mean and evil way to do it, but it would be a way to do it. If Half-Life 3 ever comes to fruition, if our dreams become a reality, they, I think, have to remake all of the previous Half-Lives. For those fans that don't know anything about Half-Life or have never played Half-Life before, you can't just walk into Half-Life 3 without not playing the previous ones. What? Now, Half-Life has won over 50 game awards, which is insane. Again, one of the most influential first-person shooters of all time. So the Half-Life franchise is nowhere near gone. It's probably still selling, or people are still probably playing it, especially because Half-Life Alyx is back into the fold. So they are still making games in the Half-Life universe. But we hope that we'll see a Half-Life 3, and with that, Half-Life remakes. It wouldn't be a most wanted remake list without Metal Gear Solid. Released in 1998, one of the biggest games in gaming, the biggest franchises in gaming. Oh my goodness. Now, when you think of the most iconic stealth game in history, Metal Gear Solid most likely will be on the tip of your tongue. If not, it probably should be, because Metal Gear Solid is. And again, just like Half-Life, it paved the way to so many games after it. It took so many risks in gaming, like having to change your controller from player 1 to player 2. A lot of creative elements came from Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear franchise. Hideo Kojima created one of the biggest franchises in gaming. And it continues to be, because fans want so bad remakes, and not only that, more games in the Metal Gear universe. So there is a question. If Metal Gear is one of the biggest franchises in gaming, why hasn't there been a remake? There's been remakes for Resident Evil, there's been remakes for Tony Hawk even, and yet Metal Gear is not in there? Well, things are a little bit weird with Konami and Hideo Kojima, but Konami still owns the rights. Now, is that a good thing? Do we want a Metal Gear game without Kojima at the helm of it? Is it even Metal Gear without Kojima at the helm of it? That's weird. It's like Lord of the Rings without J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, it is a remake, so you are able to take what you have for the blueprints of the first game and just put it onto a next-gen console, but you still might miss the nuances and the love and the passion and the Metal Gear vibe of it without Kojima. Now, there are various sites that are saying Konami is remaking this game and possibly making a VR Metal Gear game. I don't know how I feel about that, but I guess we'll see. Do you think Konami can pull off a Metal Gear Solid remake without Kojima, or do you need Kojima in order to really remake those games? Will the game still sell? Will the game still be Metal Gear? A remake is not just copy-paste, right? There's still additions that people add for next gen, or Easter eggs, or fun things like that, like collectibles. I think, yes, it will be a Metal Gear Solid game, but without Kojima, it might be missing the heart of the game. Psi-Ops, the Mindgate Conspiracy. I remember renting this game at Blockbuster when I was a kid and playing the heck out of it on my PS2. It is so much fun. Now, Psi-Ops was developed by Midway and released in 2004 on the PS2. And it's been 18 years. Give us Psi-Ops. Now, what made this game spectacular was its ragdoll physics on top of the incredible telekinesis and psychic powers that your character had. This wasn't your ordinary third-person shooter game. You had telekinesis, remote viewing, which allowed you to go through walls and doors to see what was on the other side, mind drain, which gave you the ability to absorb the enemy's mental energy and replenish yours, mind control, pyrokinesis, and aura view to allow you to see erased messages and invisible minds. You had so many powers, and what made this game, again, even better was as you leveled up, you gained these powers, so you really felt like you were upgrading yourself. You were powering up. What an amazing skill tree this had. I mean, it didn't really have a skill tree, but it had a skill progression. What was also really cool is you can use all those powers in different ways to unlock puzzles in the game and take down enemies in different ways, so you can get really, really creative with it. GameSpot named this the best PS2 game of 2004, and there's only been one game, and this could have been an incredible franchise, but Midway sold the rights to WB. So WB, I ask you, I implore you, please give us a remake of Psi-Ops, because it would be so, so good. Time Splitters, released in 2000 by Free Radical Design. Time Splitters is a first-person shooter much in the same vein as GoldenEye. The series has 3 games, Time Splitters 2, and Time Splitters Future Perfect. Now, the first game was a PS2 exclusive, but the next 2 opened its doors to other consoles, allowing more people to enjoy it. The second game actually got better reviews than the first and third, although the first one was still incredible. It introduced you to the game. Each game focused on first-person combat with elements of puzzles, and they had a fun multiplayer game mode where you work together through missions and even have competitive multiplayer. The last we heard was August in 2019 that THQ Nordic hired Steve Ellis to help plot the future of Time Splitters, and there have been rumors and rumblings that either a remake or a new game is in the works. Then, in May 2021, Free Radical Design would be headed by Ellis and Doak, the franchise creators, to create more Time Splitter games. Now, fans are remaking Time Splitters under Time Splitters Rewind. They're making it for PC using Unreal Engine 4, and the release date is to be announced, but it's been in development since 2013. So there are a ton of fans of Time Splitters, so much so that they're actually making their own version of the game, which I think is beautiful. And there's tons of fan-made games out there, but to have them do Time Splitters, I think is really incredible. Fans have been asking for a Time Splitters remake for a while now, especially because it's kind of outdated. The controls are kind of a little bit wonky now, like that GoldenEye type thing. And if you do remake it to a version now, I think you're able to make the controls and the mechanisms and the game a lot more accessible to people now. So we ask, give us Time Splitters. The Mark of Kree. Chances are you've never heard of this game. It's the most underrated game in gaming. I mean, maybe not in gaming, that's a big statement, but it's an amazing game, and probably not a lot of people played this. And The Mark of Kree came out on PS2 in 2002. And if you haven't played it, it's an utter shame. A damn shame. It was so good, they actually made a sequel to it that didn't stand up as much as the first game, but it was still a fun game. What made this game stand out was the animation style behind it, the graphics. It almost felt like a Pixar game, much like Kenna Bridge of Spirits. But don't think this game was a cartoonish game. It actually had some pretty violent graphics when you killed enemies, like stabbing them in the head, stabbing them in the body, and there was some blood. Music was incredibly mixed well with the fast-paced combat. The cutscenes were drawings of characters and locations with incredible voice acting behind it. The voiceover work was so good, and it really stood out. Like, it really felt like a Disney or a Pixar movie.
Mankind dismissed the ancient warnings about these words of power. They were merely stories, tales from a long past time.
You play as 𝔸𝔻𝕆ℝ𝔸𝕄𝔸, a noble warrior who must protect the marks of Kree. You have a raven called Kuzo, who's actually the narrator of the game, and it focused on stealth and action adventure. The game wasn't easy either. I remember dying pretty often. Also, using Kuzo to scope out enemies ahead was pretty dang clutch. It's an incredible game. Not only that, but the level design and the artwork behind it was really fun. So if you haven't played Mark of Kree, I don't know if you can play it now, but it definitely should be remade. And I think if it was remade on a next gen, or even with the graphics that we have now, it would be incredible. If Kenna Bridges Spears taught us anything, is that Mark of Kree could do just as well. Now there are a ton of games that have been remade. Are we tired of remakes? Would we rather have new games than remakes? I mean, Hollywood keeps remaking the same movies and TV shows for the past 50 years. So why can't they do it with games? Am I right? I think with gaming, it's hard to find the previous consoles or the games that you grew up with as a kid anymore. And so if you have a family or new friends that you want to introduce these games to, you can't do it. It's a lot more difficult. So remaking games allows that to be possible. The new generation of gamers don't know what maybe Prince of Persia was, or Metal Gear Solid, or Twisted Metal. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, stop somebody on the street. Do you think they know the Mark of Kree? Absolutely not. And if you know what the Mark of Kree is, let me know in the comments so I can say, yeah. So I think these games should be remade. Why not? They were cult classics. They were huge games. They sold a bunch. You'd continue to sell if you had those games remade. And now is the time where we're seeing a lot of games being remade. So let me know in the comments what games you want to see remade. If you disagree with this list completely, if you're like, yo, dude, what are you thinking? Absolutely not. Or if you agree. I'd love to know what your input is. Like, comment, share it. We want to grow this community. Link in our Discord and our Twitch channel below. I'm Josh. Peace.